Sweating balls. I'm a hot mess. Hi guys, Gretchen here. Today I want to give you 5 tips for what you should do before hiking or backpacking alone. So let's get started. Try this again. So number 1, numero uno, research. Before you start any backpacking trip, you should look into as much information as you can about where you will be going. Trying to find out as much information about the trail or trails that you're going to be hiking on, whether it's the mileage of the trail, the terrain, the elevation of the trail. I highly recommend looking on websites for like trail reports of the trails that you're going to be hiking on, looking at pictures, photos of what the trail looks like, and videos. Videos are a great resource to know what you can expect on that trail, especially if you can find some really good videos. And one of the reasons I actually even started this channel was to give more trail information on things that I couldn't actually find that much of. And I find that actually the longer videos are more likely going to give you more trail input than say a short 1 or 2 minute video. So you want to research things like the trail closures. I mean, a lot of times Smoky Mountain National Park on their website, you know, they'll tell you whether a trail has closed due to maintenance, due to weather, due to bear activity. And that's another thing you should be researching is what is the bear activity. Sometimes campsites and shelters can be closed if there has been some significant bear activity. So it's important to kind of know what you're going to expect from that, or just to make sure that where you're wanting to hike is you can actually hike. Also, definitely check out the weather forecast. And although mountains are always very unpredictable when it comes to weather, at least it'll give you an idea of what to anticipate and what to expect so that you can plan accordingly. Also, in doing your research, it's important to find out your water source, because certain times of the year, water sources can be harder to find, or to do a research on the campsite you're going to stay at or the shelter to see if there is actually a water source close by available. Or, like I said, I would highly recommend just looking up different hiking websites, YouTube videos, and hiking groups. You can actually find a lot of valuable information from other people when you go into like Facebook groups. There's usually tons of hiking groups, and probably for the area where you're going to be hiking, and most likely you're going to find at least some information. And then just ask around. You'd be surprised, sometimes people have hiked the trails you're looking to hike and will know what you can expect. Number 2, the second tip is to be prepared. The old Boy Scout motto, be prepared. And that actually really ties with researching. If you've done your research, it's much easier to be prepared. And by being prepared, that means making sure that you actually have the right gear with you when you head out on the trail. Now, if you're doing a day hike, obviously you're going to need different gear than what you're going to need when you backpack. And depending on the time of year that you're going to hike, whether it's during the summer or the winter, depends on the elevation of where you're going to be hiking. It depends on the area, on what you're going to need for gear. And it's very, very important to make sure that you have the appropriate gear with you before you head out on a trail. People have been injured or lost or hurt because they didn't have the right gear. Also, making sure that you have not only the appropriate gear items for when you're hiking, but that you have an adequate amount of food, of water. A lot of parks require a permit to stay in the backcountry. So if you are doing a backpacking trip, you're going to want to be sure that whether you're staying at a campsite or you're staying at a shelter, that you have that permit if it's required. Be prepared means being knowledgeable about your hike, knowing what to expect. Most national park websites, particularly I know with the Smoky Mountains National Park, they always give up-to-date information on whether it's road closures or bear activity, campsite information. There's tons of information, what the rules are, what you can do, what you can't do. And it's very important that you've researched that and that you know this and you're prepared for it. For instance, the Great Smoky Mountains National Park does not allow dogs on any trails other than 2 that are next to the visitor center. So it's important that you know this so that you don't go out with your dog on a backpacking trip and oops, now you've gotten a big fine because you didn't prepare and didn't research to know. So it's important not only having the right gear, but in preparation is knowing your gear. So I recommend before you set out, particularly on a backpacking trip, is to have actually tried out your gear. And that means just setting it up. So I would just recommend, like if you have a tent that you've never used before, set it up in your living room. Just make sure, or set it up also in your backyard, to make sure that all the parts are there, that you can set it up, and that you know how to do that by yourself. You have to do everything by yourself, which means knowing that you can do it by yourself. Knowing that how to use all the pieces of your gear. Yeah, and just understanding your gear as well. So that's part of being prepared, is just redoing the research and knowing about your gear and knowing how it works and what it's used for and why you need it. And those are very important for having a successful solo trip out in the woods. Number 3, have a plan. Then have a backup plan. Going along with researching your trip, being prepared, knowing your gear, having the right gear, and making sure that you have all of the supplies that you need, is actually making a plan. It's easy to think that you can just go out and wing it on a trip, and experienced hikers do sometimes do that, but I would venture to say that even the most experienced hikers still have a plan in their head, but a lot don't, and a lot of times that you can run into some serious problems by not having a plan. And by having a plan, it means knowing what trails you're going to hike, having done that research to know how the trails are and what the conditions they are in. But when you have that plan in place, then it helps you to kind of stay on track to make sure that you don't get lost when you're out there, because you know where you're going, you know what kind of mileage to expect. Then having a backup plan allows for any unforeseen circumstances to happen out on the trail, which can happen. Wild can be very unpredictable, so it's important to have some type of alternate plan in place in case the plans you initially made aren't going to work out. And for instance, in the Smoky Mountains, I can tell you there's a lot of stream crossings on a lot of trails, and they can be very hazardous and dangerous. That's another reason to, number 1, do your research, because you will find that there are trails where it'll tell you on the official park map that these are dangerous trails. If it's rained a lot, you might not want to hike it. It's another reason to have a plan in place on what direction you're going to hike and where you're going to leave your car, just because that's how you run into problems with people run into problems with it, whether they get lost or they get hurt on the trail. Is not having that plan in place, or having that backup plan, which is even more important than having the plan. Number 4, tell someone your hiking plans. It is important to let someone know where you're going to be, what trails you're going to hike, where you're going to camp at if you're backpacking, and when you have an idea of when you're going to return. And you need someone who is responsible enough that they'll actually follow up if you don't return in a certain time. You know, and they'll try to call you, text you, touch base with either some friends, other friends or family, or, you know, potentially contact the ranger station if they haven't heard from you. If you just don't have anyone, you know, if you don't have family or friends, someone that you can let know where you're going to be, or someone reliable that you feel like you can count on, you can always stop at the nearest park ranger station where you're going to be hiking and let them know your plans and let them know your anticipated date and time of return. Now, granted, it's not always possible to say exactly when you're going to return, but they can have an idea of what day you'll return and what time of day. And then what you need to do is tell them, hey, I will stop back by and let you know I made it back, or I'll make a phone call. And believe it or not, they will check on that. So there is always a way to let someone know. And that's important for that, because if you do get injured on the trail, then you have someone out there who knows that you're out on this particular hike, this particular trail, and they know if you aren't seen after a day or 2 or however long you're out, to look for you, and they know where to go. So it's very important to let someone know where you're going to be. In addition to that, it's really great if you can purchase a GPS tracker which you can use so that if you are on the trail and you get injured, that there's a way for you to communicate with someone else, whether it be the emergency responders, a park ranger, a friend or family member, of where you're going to be located. There's several different options online. You can do your research. They're on Amazon, various websites. There's actually apps out there as well, but two just offhand that are pretty popular among backpackers is the Spot Gen, and there's different versions of that one, and then the Garmin InReach, and there's also different versions of that as well. I personally actually right now do not have one of those, and I have solo backpacked without it, but yes, I would much rather have one, and do anticipate buying one soon. I don't think it's an absolute must to have one to go out solo backpacking or solo hiking. It's just an added comfort and an added peace of mind way to communicate with others if you were to get lost or injured. Number 5, have experience first. Now this one is not a necessity to go out on a solo hike or a solo backpacking trip, but I think in the long run you're better off if you do have some hiking experience first before you hit the trail on your own. And that's not always an option for some people because you know, whether you don't really have close friends or family, so you may feel sort of intimidated to ask anyone you don't really know to go hiking with. I would say that if you are going to go out and do a hike, a solo hike without any experience, then do a day hike and do a short mileage day hike. Don't go out and try to do a backpacking trip. Save that for when you've got some pretty good day hiking under your belt first. And although day hiking and backpacking are different things, if you've never even hit a trail and now you're going to go out and stay overnight, you're just really running the risk of getting into a bad situation, whether it be getting lost or hurt or something worse. So with that being said, I highly recommend hiking with another person first, particularly backpacking with another person first. And here's the thing, even if you don't have a particular friend or a family member that you can hike with, there are actually a lot of hiking groups on social media that do backpacking trips, that I believe even REI will offer some backpacking classes that you can actually go out and do like a short backpacking trip, and they tell you all about the gear you need to have and about the gear, and they just kind of give you the whole experience of what it's like to backpack. So I highly recommend doing that. Yes, definitely I recommend having some backpacking experience with another person or a group of people before heading out solo backpacking alone. And solo hiking is slightly different in that I don't think it's quite as intimidating to hit the trail alone as opposed to, say, you know, spending the night out in the woods. I just recommend that if you've never hiked before and you want to go out and do a solo day hike, pick a short trail and pick a popular trail. Those are my 2 main suggestions for that. So those are my 5 tips for your must-dos before doing a backpacking trip alone. You don't have to feel intimidated by hiking or backpacking alone. It's actually a really wonderful experience. It can give you a lot more confidence in yourself. I believe make you a better hiker because you're going to follow these other 4 steps, such as researching, being prepared, planning, and doing those things are actually going to help you be more knowledgeable about the trail, about your gear, and just about being more conscientious about your awareness and surroundings of your environment. If you want to be a successful hiker or a successful backpacker, then these tips are really going to help you be a better hiker and make your overnight trips in the woods so much better and so much more fun. Although hiking and backpacking alone can seem scary, really honestly, being in the woods is probably one of the safest places to be. It's more of a matter, you'll find that the ones who do end up with, whether it's a fall, drowning, dehydration, getting lost, it comes from a lack of either preparedness or lack of knowledge. So it's important to not only be prepared, but have that knowledge, have that research in your belt so that you can be the best hiker you can be. So anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this video. Thanks so much for watching. Be sure to give it a big thumbs up And if you're not subscribed, hit that subscribe button below. I'm going to do a little series of solo hiking tips, so stay tuned for that. In the meantime, happy hiking and hope to see you on the trail.